here. So let's make sure we're working. Okay, looks like we're recording. You guys are too cute. I love it. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Being Inspired radio show. My name is Amanda Johnson, your host, and I am here today with two multi-dimensional beings. These people have swirled into my life via the internet, via Facebook, slightly probably by stalking and then friend requesting, and then realizing that these people seem to have a lot in common with me, or they're at least vibing where I want to be vibing. Maybe there's a similar frequency, but I am now unabashed at reaching out to people and saying, hey, I think you're up to something really amazing. I love your message. I love your energy. Let's connect. And I was so blessed that I got 2 for 1 in that way recently when I reached out to Thomas, and then he very quickly connected me with Rose. And I think whatever comes out, I know that whatever comes out of our conversation today is going to be a blessing for all of us, because these two beings are so connected to their own knowing, their own truth, their own gifts. And now they have also found one another, and I think are compounding that, at least in my opinion, from knowing them only moments. And yet I have a very deep knowing that that is true. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation and seeing where it takes us and how it unfolds. And we're going to be delving into this idea of divine love, which is so exciting to me. So let me introduce you to my guests today. We have Thomas Radtke and Rose Madelaine, and they are each a father and mother, as you can guess, who's who, and they are truth and self-mastery seekers. And the key is that they are lovers, and not just with one another, but as a being in this world. They know how to love, and they are love. And that is what we're going to get into today, which I cannot wait. So Thomas and Rose, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
So I like to start every episode reading a quote or a passage from a text, a book that has inspired me on my journey. And I know neither one of you have, well, Rose, you said you have read some of this, so I'm not sure if this passage will ring true or will resonate with you from what you remember or not. Thomas, you haven't read this book yet or even heard of it. It's Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love. And this book is her reflections on the principles of A Course in Miracles. And I was guided to this book a few years ago for a program I was participating in. And I really loved this book. It resonated with me on many levels. It opened me up to A Course in Miracles, which has since also served me on my path. And the concept of love is, of course, as you can tell in the title, a main focal point of the book. And so I knew I wanted to go to that text to find a quote to read. And I use Kindle, so I can actually search for keywords, and I searched for divine love. And there was one passage in the entire book that used the word divine love. So I knew it was meant to be. And that's the passage I'm going to be reading for you today. So Rose and Thomas and all of you listening out there, really do your best to tune into these words that Marianne Williamson has written, and see what it says to you, how it speaks to you. And then that's how we will kickstart our conversation by whatever this reminder brings up in you about what love is. So here's the quote from A Return to Love. The concept of a divine or Christ mind is the idea that at our core, we are not just identical, but actually the same being. The word Christ is a psychological term. No religion has a monopoly on the truth. Christ refers to the common thread of divine love that is the core and essence of every human mind. The love in one of us is the love in all of us. There's actually no place where God stops and you start, and no place where you stop and I start. Love is energy, an infinite continuum. Your mind extends into mine and into everyone else's. It doesn't stay enclosed within your body. And she uses the word mind quite a bit, which is fine. I might also expand that to say heart or, beingness. So whoever wants to start, what does that quote say to you or mean to you?
You know, I want you to start.
I thought it was really beautiful. It made me think of how I feel when we are connecting and we're feeling into our own energy fields. And there's something different with Thomas where it's almost like I can't identify where I begin and end and he begins and ends. And it's just one, like a oneness with him, that feeling. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we're one line, so of course I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. To me, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
You know, a lot of things come to my mind and to my heart with that, and that as well. Like there's definitely a sense. A part of my background is in delineating the difference of you separate from others and that communion of oneness and oneness. And so with Rose, it's actually trickier because there are many times where what we're feeling, there is such similarity, that clarity of where do I end and she begins to get lost. And that's a beautiful thing to get into, that kind of Christ consciousness of knowing, which I feel is in part where our knowingness in a way originated. And then there's a lot of fun being in our separateness as well. You know, like that dance of Shiva Shakti, the masculine, feminine, woman, man, like that. The differences also are very enticing. But to be able to kind of ping pong back and forth between those worlds is certainly a lot of fun. So, I mean, Marianne Williamson, I mean, she obviously writes beautifully, so she nailed that. I love it.
Awesome.
Good with your words.
They're your words.
That's right. You guys share one mind, one heart, one soul. I love it. So tell me again, I've gotten a little taste of your story and how you swirled together and found one another. And please share that with the audience so that they have an understanding of where are you right now on this journey, and let's give them a little bit of a baseline, a little bit of a picture of how you found one another and where you are today.
Should I start? I'll start with that one. Okay, so both of us were married for a long time. I was married and with my partner for just about 16 years, and you were
14 and a half years.
14 and a half years. And both of our marriages ended almost at the same time. Last year. And I feel like both of us, but I'm going to speak to myself, spent a large part of 2018 reconnecting to who am I, because I had lost my autonomy in my marriage. So I was doing that kind of inner work stuff and searching, and I had started dating at the last half of the year, but it was almost like every man I dated, it felt like there were certain aspects that I liked and I wanted, but I also got into this place where I wanted to meet someone. I knew there was someone out there that had everything, and I wasn't going to settle. And around the time that I was contemplating dating this guy and it didn't work out, I was like, that's it. I'm going to write a list, and this is going to be the list of like the most, like, think of your, I want to like dream guy, but like everything that you want without even holding back, not even thinking that I didn't think it wasn't possible, like really specific things. And then, so I did that. I wrote out this list, which sounds so high school, but I did. For me, I like to write a lot. And then I had shared a post on social media, and it was like a really vulnerable post that it didn't get into like the list, but it was more feelings of, this is what I'm looking for, and I'm kind of like at this or nothing in my life. And Thomas saw that post and messaged me, and that's how we met.
Yeah, that's where I chimed in. And I actually also I had done some dating, but I got to this point where I loved being single. Yeah, and I just shared with some people, like, I'm going to stay single for a while. This is great. I love to be vivacious and even flirtatious, not in trying to meet women, but just fully alive, unabashed. And then, somewhere in the middle of December, we friended each other. I don't even remember the exact moment, but then this post came up. And what I saw as a description of what this woman, Rose, was looking for, actually very much not only aligned, but it was identical to many of the things I'm looking for. And it's not your everyday list of like, oh, tall, dark, and handsome, but it was the lists of absolute vulnerability, full transparency, lifting each other up, being able to support each other and be able to be fully honest. Like, and these to me are core attributes of how I like to live. And so to see someone speak to that and want that, I was impressed. On that note though, I hadn't met Rose. And so I had commented on somebody else's comment and pretty much just said, I mean, it sounds like #relationship goals, but it also sounds like an invitation. And I really don't know who you are, but I'd have a coffee with you. And I left it at that. But you know how you can feel a little bit of a bubble. And so, so I just kind of scoped her out online a little bit and checked out some of her videos and who she was. And I fell in love with her voice. I fell in love with the way she talked and how she talked and where she came from when she talked. And it was the next day I had posted something and she had saw it. Anyway, she messaged me. Did a private message to me, and she beat me to it because I was sitting down earlier in the day and I didn't have time. And we ended up deciding we would do a virtual coffee, and we set a time to meet, and we talked, I think, onwards of 3 hours, and it felt like about 5 minutes, and talked every single day since. Even the days were like, no, we can't talk. We got stuff. We got kids. We need a break. We would end up on the phone again, talking for hours, and it was amazing. And so that intensity, I feel, allowed us to really see and come into a closer alignment with each other. And it really only took.
You should mention that we didn't.
Yeah, we don't. We live in different countries, right? Close enough, Canada and the U.S., but it was the second day.
It requires a passport.
The what?
It requires a passport.
Right. I think it was the second day or the third day.
It was after the first phone call.
After the first phone call, we started even debating how are we going to meet? How can we do this? And then it was
debating, planning.
Good point.
And you sent me that song.
Yeah. We were falling pretty hard from the beginning. Yeah. But then then it was like, we counted down. It was like 19 days until we got to meet. 18 days. 17 days. And it was just a buildup of anticipation. Do you have more to say? Because I could keep going. I could keep going because as the relationship unfolded, there's all like, sparklers and volcanoes and excitement and thrill as you come to expect. But there was also a rich amount of vulnerability, what we were really looking for, what we were wanting. Like there was moments where we exposed our own issues and triggers. And there's this phrase I like to use called a love bomb. And when there's a huge amount of beauty going on, right, that definitely tends to illuminate or make a strong shadow. And so there was a number of times where I would be my self-talk and my own shyness or shamefulness around things would come up. And she really approached it first when she had shared some things that she had concern about. And then there was the concern that even sharing them, that maybe I wouldn't like her as much. And then that, of course, invited me to go into my whole, like, fall apart the next day. And we had a number of instances like this where our own vulnerability brought us then closer together as well. And it was, they were the things like that really began to round out the pieces, that it wasn't just, woohoo, great, hey, we're in love and it's wonderful, but to walk through those those vulnerable moments together and really be exposed and stand with each other in that, for me was magic. And I still long for those moments when we get our rawness out on the table.
He loves it.
I love it because there's also, and this is
like, I don't want to talk about it.
This is what I love about Rose is she has this radical capacity to love me and accept me as I am and give space for whoever I am. Because I too am coming out of a long marriage and really lost my autonomy in it. And so she really kind of holding with her hands gives me space to be autonomous and loves who I am and what I bring. And then it's vice versa. Like anyway, she has an amazing capacity to love and accept me just as I am. And for me, that is not only refreshing and vibrant, but then when I do bring myself and it aligns with who she is, it's like, how can you deny what's going on here? I don't know if my words are quite doing justice, but it is magnetic how those things unfolded between us.
Yeah.
The dovetail, yeah, So there's, I don't even know what I'm answering anymore. But yeah, it was amazing, and it was rich. It was deep. It was difficult at times. It was challenging at times, and we.
And we're talking, just for those listening, like 2 months, maybe not even, correct? Since you first had contact?
What's the date today?
Like a month.
It's been like a month. Yeah, we're like mid-February right now.
Yeah, our first date was on January 11th.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to offer that up as well for those listening. Like, this gives a little bit more context as well.
Yeah. I think
I want to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Saying that the development of the relationship online was beautiful, or over the phone, because if we were to be in the same city, I believe the physical component would have come in much sooner. But because we had to wait on that, it allowed us to build up that connection in a much deeper way, I think. Yeah.
And build intimacy. Okay, I'll just one little thing.
No, I know. I'm gonna see if my question still makes sense when it's time. Go ahead.
I said this fairly early on, that if we had met in the same town, I don't think it would have worked, because I would have overdone myself, although I spent a lot of time on the phone. But I would have lost too much of my autonomy, because I was falling for her so much. And so that distance actually required us for me to stay in my own world, but enabled us to grow in a deep level of intimacy, not based on sexuality, that cultivated the relationship. It also allowed, when we actually met, for that sexual intimacy to just go crazy. But intimacy. Now everyone knows. But intimacy gets so often related to sexuality, which is great. But if that's the only place where you know it, then it becomes a challenge, or an extra step. I don't want to say it becomes a challenge. It becomes an extra step to bring it into the other aspects of your relationship. Right. So now, I'm really going to jump topics. So now, when we get to cultivate and get into sexuality, there is a whole other groundwork of being vulnerable and holding each other and exploring and being open to that is already there, that allows for a lot more freedom in that. So it really enabled for a lot of
good times, a lot of love.
Good time. Very good time. Okay, what's your question?
Well, let me first of all comment. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Those listening, if you aren't watching, I get to watch these two beautiful beings together. So those listening, you get to hear it. I wanted to go back actually to something, Rose, you said and again, I'm very inspired by your declaration and putting out there. And you said something to me that was so key. And for those listening, in case you missed it, I want to reiterate it. You said that you got to a point where you believed in I'm now going to say it in my own way, but you believed in every bone and cell of your body that it was possible to have what you want. And for me, I think manifestation, visualization, those can go, that can get really slippery really quickly, because I think oftentimes, at least in my experience, I wasn't manifesting what I wanted, and I didn't know why, because I would write the list, or I'd put the vision board up, or I would, do whatever. And it wouldn't happen. And it's because, for me, it doesn't really matter how many lists you write or how many vision boards you make if you don't believe it in your core essence that it's possible. So to me, you first came to the belief. And the thing is, as soon as you believed it, we're talking within a month, you met the guy, boom, here it is. It's all happening, probably less than that, right? Within such a short amount of time. To me, that's such power in having the belief and then declaring it and putting it out in the world. Do you have anything else you want to say about that?
That just gets me all lit up. That is how I live my life. I feel like, that abundance is all around us, and that we only create limitations. And it is that, not the vision board aspect itself. It's the, you have to reprogram your subconscious belief system. And if you say, I want this, but there's that little voice is like, that's too much or whatever, then that needs to be looked at. And I have no problems dreaming very large. And I'm at a point in my life where everything I've ever wanted is right in front of me. And it feels amazing. And then you get momentum when you start realizing how powerful you are. There really is no limitations on what you can create. And even with our dynamic, the fact that we live in different countries, it hasn't even entered my mind that there's a difficulty in the logistics of that. And we are already like, there's no issues because that's what we've created with our minds. Even in the face of all the people around us that think that we're crazy or think that it's not going to work because we have kids and we live in different countries, but here we are together doing it because that's what we imagined.
And I think that is so powerful, not only for love, and we are love, love is everything, and it can go into every aspect of our life. So thank you for being such a beautiful, in my opinion, model or representation of that possibility. And for me, that's inspiring. I hope for everyone listening, I trust for everyone listening, that's inspiring to say, it doesn't just take writing a list, right? It does, we want to get clear on what we desire. Then the work, I think, comes into clearing out everything that is keeping us from that desire. So again, thank you for that. The other thing that was coming up as you two were speaking, and Thomas, as you were talking, was this idea of going back to almost like being one, and where one stops and the other begins, and this, you literally were showing each other you were one and the same. So Rose would share her vulnerabilities and fear and shames and whatnot, and then you would be able to do the same, and you would do the same. So I think you also, I just wanted to point to the fact this isn't so much a question other than just, again, a saying, look, this is all connecting back to what we started with, which is we are one, and it's all there. And you two are a representation of how to do that in a partnership. So I just want to keep hearing more about your story and what's going on here. So, but I mean, we've got the nuts and bolts of it. Help us better understand, again, when we talk about divine love, and we are love. Love is who we are. You would even identify yourself as a lover. And what does that mean? Like, what is it? What have you either learned in the last 20 plus years of being maybe in and out of relationships? I'm assuming there was a few before your marriages. Forgive me if I'm wrong, or at least one. And then, what does love mean to you now? So there's a big, wide open question for you to go wherever you want with it.
Being a person that is very open with my heart and not having walls on my heart, I love everybody, even people that I don't want to be in a relationship with. And I had to learn when I was dating to, even though, and I think that this is very common with people that have open hearts or people that identify as empaths or as in that realm, which I'm sure I can tell a lot of your audience is you meet someone and they're not, you get into this dynamic where you want to help them or heal them, and it's not because you can see it's like you see their wounding and their issues, and you love them anyways, and you see their potential, and so you want to help raise them up, and you get into that dynamic. And I just learned that it's okay to love everybody, but I don't need to date that.
Rose, I wish you and I had been friends 5 years ago. That's all I can say.
God, I have a boyfriend to figure this out, and because it creates that mismatch of dynamic, and that was on my list too. My list wasn't it wasn't like a typical he has to have this job or this car. No, it was all we need to be at the same level. The same vibrational match is important because I didn't want to be the healer in the relationship anymore. And to be with someone who's also has done their work as well. I think that that's the difference in the loving.
And there's always room for more work too.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. The work
of course. And yet,
but being with someone that recognizes that, someone that can sit in the fact that, oh, I'm being triggered, why, and have that self-analyzation instead of someone that isn't in the awareness is a totally different situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before you answer, Thomas, I have to insert one more selfish question here, which is, I am the type of person who I love to break that stuff down. I'm like, all right, I'm being triggered. Let me figure out why. Let me tell you why. Let's talk this out. Can you give me, okay, yeah, see, and so what I love is that, Rose, you now have the capacity to hold that because I think I need both of you really quickly to give me a little love and tenderness and affirmation, that because that drives some people crazy. Like literally, like, really, you exhaust me. This is just, why are we still talking about this? And then that sends me into, now I don't believe I need to modify myself, because I do believe this person. So maybe, and again, I'm asking a selfish question. I imagine listeners can turn this into their own version of that question of, oh, here's this thing I do, and I think I need to modify it or be different because somebody doesn't like it. So I inserted another question there, Thomas, but if you want to also respond, or Rose, respond to that before Thomas answers.
Can I respond to that? I think it comes down to doing the work where you're really okay with who you are. I edited myself for so long that I removed every person, situation, thing that didn't vibrate with me. And if you're going to share your truth, especially vulnerable stuff, and someone's saying you're too much, that person is not a person. That should be your person, I think. And to have enough self-worth to say, you can still love them, but they don't need, that's not, I would say that's not your person, right?
Definitely.
What do you think?
I mean, for me, I come back to a lot of why be in a relationship? What is it for? And I used to be a relationship coach. I do tend to think that relationships are the deepest and strongest crucible for self-growth. And so I'm not even in, because I need to ask that question. I tend, like, in a relationship, I'm tending to wanting to grow and wanting them to grow all the time. And so I love being able to process and pick apart, because for me, there is such release and free release and opening with it. And so I never wanted to just kind of get married because that's the routine, and to have the white picket fence in the house and the 2.5 kids, to have that vision. That was just never my vision. That was not my vision for getting in a relationship. And then even with Rose, I have to say it's really the resonance that has brought us together. That alignment. I haven't, like I said, I was really happy being single. And actually, in my first messaging with you, I even said, I'm not even sure if I was ready to date. And you had said the same. So for me, why you're in a relationship, and it takes some consciousness to look at why you are in a relationship, why you do want to have kids, like what is the actual intention or the direction of it, which is relevant for me.
And that's relevant in friendship too.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, because we seem to happen upon things and we don't always discern what is of value, what's serving, and where do I want to be going. To go back to answer your question on love, a little bit more of a cognitive thinking on it. Love for me. What was the question about love again?
Oh, I don't remember. Something though about maybe what you've learned about it over your journey, and then and what it means to you now. Like, what is love for you?
Well, I was in a 14.5-year marriage where I felt I loved brilliantly, but I lost myself in it. And so a lot of my healing in the past year has come back to finding my own autonomy and actually going back to reclaim that who I am matters, and that I had to come back to re-accept who I am. In other words, in a way, I could see where I've made mistakes, and learning, I want to go back and make those mistakes again, because I love radically, and I'm willing to love and wanting to love. And those things come from some times in my life where I was loved radically, and especially from my grandma when I was young, and then she died. And so to have a massive amount of love and then have it disappear put me on a quest at a very young age looking for love, not knowing it though, not knowing it at all. And when another teacher of mine died a few years ago, I went into a deep inquiry of why I wake up in the morning. And that led me to this mantra, if you will, that I want to be lived by love. And that for me, love is, if you will, this invisible matrix that it holds our cells together. It makes life happen. It is the rawest material that existence is built out of. And I want those to be the strings that make me move. But that means stepping across uncomfortable edges. It means surrender. It means getting to know where my personality steps in and where it needs to step out. It means loving at times recklessly and without abandon. And it's a day-by-day process to come into what love means. And it's not always all unicorns and rainbows. And it's not always this beautiful kind of love that we think of. When we think of love, we have this glowing essence of it, but it's really the hardcore material that life is. And so it became a journey of mine a number of years ago to have that live me, have that run me. Because what that ultimately means, which has showed up a lot here as well, is so often other things run us. Our fears run us, our limitations run us, our precepts and programming from our youth or from traumas run us. And that is so the norm. And so to begin picking those things apart means, for me, much like you just said, to process endlessly. Of course, there's a balance to that. But to get into that process, to me, is to be that truth seeker or that love seeker, to really find out where the love is and how that holds us together. And then let's be held in that love rather than making love happen. Mm-hmm. And that's a journey. It's a day-by-day journey. And it's came back around through coming out of that marriage. It's come full circle with Rose. It comes through my kids. It comes through career and work. I don't know if I mentioned your question anymore, but
yeah,
that's what I like to do.
That's it. And I wanted to highlight again something that you both said to connect it together, which is I hear this important part of the puzzle, the important part of the journey or the process is to first remember who we are, to reclaim who we are, to love and accept who we are. So Rose, you doing that in terms of this is who I am, and for those who can't accept it or enjoy it, I still love you and I respect myself enough. I have enough self-worth to stay committed to that. And then Thomas, your own way of saying, okay, this is who I am. I love myself for this. I want this autonomy again in my life because I am important. And I want to highlight that for myself and also those listening to say that's a key component. That's a key component to love. It does start with us. And I do believe that in those moments where I'm still doubting my own worth or my own, am I too much? Or, and that's such a broken record that's been playing in my mind for years and years. And even when I thought I healed it, it's still there from time to time. And so when that pops up, I think that's my invitation to go, wait, hold on. I am worthy of all that I desire and all that I am, and someone else is worthy of that as well, right? So.
And I don't want to paint a picture either that all of that has to be perfect before meeting somebody. Definitely, I've walked up against the wall of like, I'm not feeling worthy or devaluing myself. That it still comes up.
Spirals.
It spirals. It deepens and lifts. And so it's not like all that was gone away and taken care of for me to be able to find the love of my life. But also to be able to speak to it and be vulnerable about it and to recognize it so then she can meet me in that, or I can meet her in that. That's doing enough work to be able to continue doing the work, because the relationship will continue to work you, and I hope to.
It's like realizing where you're messed up. You can see it.
Yeah, and you see it so much more clearly.
Yes. Yeah.
And that building of autonomy is essential, because how do you give yourself to somebody if you don't know what yourself is? And then how do you know when to not give? That is such a that autonomy piece is essential.
This question is, and I'd love to hear Rose's take on it, mainly because you're a female. Not that matters entirely. I wonder though what then the difference will be between the feminine and masculine perspective here. I was up against, and Thomas, we may have briefly chatted about this before when we connected, this idea of there's some shame that I have uncovered in myself around saying that I need, even to say I desire a partnership, and then to even allow myself to say I need a partner. I need partnership in my life. And this shame was revealed to me a few months ago, actually, where I was doing some inner reflection. I go, oh my gosh, well, no wonder I haven't allowed that into my life, because if I have a partner, I have this unconscious belief that means I am not whole in and of myself, or I am less than, or I'm whatever. And so for all those people out there who may be unconsciously believing that as well, what do you have to say to them, or what would you offer? What's your experience then with that?
I love that question. And I went through that same self-discovery a couple months back. I wrote a post about it. And I think it comes down to, it's almost like this programming, like like the Jerry Maguire, you complete me thing. And then we kind of swung the other way and everyone's like, no, I complete myself.
Yeah.
Right. But deep down we do.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
Oh yeah.
Girl.
This may be the feminine versus masculine, by the way.
There's something with who we do feel like this need, like, no, like we want to do it on our own. Like we don't need that. But when I really tapped into it, it was like, no, I do. And it was that shame, but for me, it was, what I need is everything that I can give, I want back. And that's what it was. I wanted to be met, because I know how much I can give, and it's a lot, and I needed that back. And that's okay to want that.
Whole body chills, and it's okay to want that. Like literally, I'm going to keep saying that, and I want everyone listening to go like, oh, that's right. It's okay to want that, because I think you're right. We get in this little bit of like, and there is nothing wrong with being single. I am not insinuating that at all. I think there's so much to be gained, and there's so much value in knowing yourself and being with yourself. And I'm not suggesting that everyone run out and grasp for, not at all. And you're not saying that, I can tell. And there is nothing wrong with desiring partnership and being in partnership. And so I think you're right. The pendulum has swung. And so acknowledging that and shining a light on that, I think is really important. So Thomas, if you have anything to add there, feel free to chime in.
Me too. I never associated with needing or not needing much in my life, needing a woman or not needing a woman. I am an external processor, so I do find I like to process with people. Like I do need that. I found after my marriage, I kept thinking I wanted space, but I kept dating or wanting to date. And there is something about, I love to be in relating. And I don't know if I would call it a need or a not need. I definitely can sense my need for it now. But I don't think I had that sense of, am I not whole without it? And honestly, as you ask that question, I tend to do a lot in nature. And I think of how much nature's components need each other. Like a tree is a tree. It's a tree. It's beautiful and whole in and of itself, but it needs the ground. It needs to be interwoven into rocks and soil. Like a river's a river, and it needs a bed to flow through. And so needs, there's nothing wrong with needs. I think needs are very much welcomed, and we don't value them enough. Mm-hmm. And if we did, we would probably value each other as humans even more. And so I'm going to live on that one.
Yep. Amen. Yeah, interdependence, and even looking at what it means to be needy. I've done a lot of work around the last few months. So
there's total difference.
Being needy
versus, big difference.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so I want to honor our time. This conversation could keep going and going and going. Oh my goodness. However, I want to end with a few questions of inspiration and what inspires you. But before I do that, because there probably are so many more things that we could talk about, is there anything else around your dynamic, divine love, you meeting in this world that you feel needs to be shared with this audience today?
Yeah, there is lots. How would you sum it up?
I feel specifically with us and the connection that we have, it's not just coming together for a partnership in normal sense, but we also have work to do together in that sense as well, which I think is unique to us and certain people that are on the planet right now.
Yeah.
answer to that, or
Well,
doesn't matter? That's it.
I'm just going to say yes to that. I mean, it does feel like quite a bit of our dynamic is actually to be an unfolding of things of work that we will do in time to come.
Yeah.
And there's something that ties back to that, to divine love, in being able to recognize the service that goes on between two. I think it feels elemental. That doesn't really feel like it landed what I wanted to say. I'll let it sit. We'll see what else comes up.
Please do. Yeah, if it comes up in a few minutes, just shout. In the meantime, let me ask, and you both can respond to each of these. So my first question that I always like to ask my guests is, who is a source of inspiration for you and why?
Who is?
Who? So person, entity.
Do you want me to answer that, please?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to answer it more broadly because I believe in finding inspiration, and I love forgetting the girl's name. She's maybe you'll know when I start talking about it, but she talks a lot about manifesting and using people as expanders, and noticing when you're feeling envious of someone means that you actually want what they have and to step into that. So I use people, and I'm very specific with who I follow on social media and who I surround myself with. Has to be at the same vibration or higher. So for me, I get inspiration from people that are doing something that I want. So even before I met Thomas, I would follow people that were couples that were in a relationship that I wanted, because I wanted to expand into that. If it's in a job or something, or they're creative in a certain way and there's something that I like about that, I will look to that and like allow it in so that I can expand into that. So that's the type of people that inspire me, is people that are living their truth and living boldly, living their passion and their truth, and are outside of the box, because that's how I want to live.
I think that's Lacey Phillips that you're referencing. Is that true? Wow. And here's what's so divine about that. I did not know who this woman was until probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, when a friend of mine shared a podcast episode that she was had a guest on her show, who I enjoy, Luke Story. And so I had just started following Luke. By the way, putting this out there, Luke, I think you're in a relationship, but anyway, he also is like an expander of mine, and someone who would make, probably check every box on my list. So anyway, I watched his episode with Lacey, and she talks about the expander. So anyway, I happen to know that only because of that one interaction I had with her. So very recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. I feel like we should talk more about that off the.
Okay. We'll take this offline. Okay. Thomas.
No, well, I have found for much of my life, people have not inspired me. I didn't have like gurus or people that I was like, that's who I want to be like. I can say right now, like, and I know it sounds perhaps like totally crazy, but like Rose completely inspires me in how she thinks and how she operates and how she speaks and the way she stays to her belief system. It's inspiring to see her walk in her ways, because as I resonate with them, I also see where I haven't. And so I find her extremely inspiring. But when I actually didn't hear a lot of what you guys were saying, because I was just kind of tapping into who really inspires me. And my life, I live a lot of my life following where I'm drawn. And that may be a place, it may be how people relate. It's usually not a specific person. And if that's what inspires me, I don't know. But when I think inspire, I start thinking of who I thought that I inspire with, but I feel I have unknowingly for much of my life followed and been inspired through my heart in what I do follow. And so nature inspires me. And I feel that's where I get a lot of my guidance from, is what nature says and does and tells and shares and reveals. And it's constantly around me, and that's what we are. And that can be oftentimes nature as a larger environment, an element of outside, but also the nature of the heart and the nature of communication and the nature of revealing and the nature of love. it's the how it works. And I even spoke to this someone, I think I maybe spoke to it you, what I love about you. It's, yes, I could come up with a huge list, but it's how we are together. And so I'm going to leave this, I think, with the answer of what inspires me is the how. How's that bring me forward? And that's how I tend to operate. And I didn't know I operated that way until much more recently. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that leads into my next question. So, Thomas, you may have already answered it, or you may wish to elaborate. And Rose, I'd love to hear from you as well. I like to ask what place or activity is most inspiring to you right now?
What?
You said nature, place, or activity. So if there's something that you like to do that inspires you. So if it's a different answer or if it's the same one.
Why don't you go first?
Stop. Sometimes it's just too much.
Too much, not too much.
Too much, not too much.
Sorry, not sorry.
So for me, I have a much more basic answer, but I love running in forests. So I used to be a competitive runner, ran my whole life, and I love pushing myself to that point where physically you're at a certain level of just pure exhaustion. It can bring you into a meditative state, and then combining that with running in, I live in the Vancouver area, so the temperate rainforest, and being in the forest, and also pushing yourself physically and forcing yourself to, you're breathing heavy. I get the most inspiration, the most downloads. I often have to stop and write as I'm in the forest. So I'd say that is my biggest source of where I like to go. And then a close second to that would be, again, living in Vancouver, very blessed, but the ocean, being near the ocean, anything that makes you feel like, I don't know, just like a speck in it all.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, nature. I can't get enough of nature, and I just went through a shift of wanting to change and formulate how I'm living. So I'm living in nature, and that can be doing anything. That can be walking, it can be hiking, it can be meditating. It's just really being in the elements, and I'm going to say mountains, and I'm going to add ocean as well. Like, those are my two favorite places if I was to call out places. Activity-wise, other than being in nature, would be relating practices. I love to drop into deep, intimate relating with people, because there's this potential that grows. There's this ability to heal, to collaborate, to almost tap into the unknown. So in that also means meditation, and meditating into non-dual states is really a strong passion of mine. Not a strong passion, but also it's something I hunger for regularly. I mean, I like being physically active. I definitely work out and do yoga, and I've been a yoga teacher
He's really good at yoga
for a long time. And so I mean, these are all things that I very much enjoy, but it's being embodied, being embodied, really coming into my own experience. And so again, it sounds really trite, but my favorite place and experience is to be here now. I know it sounds freaking ridiculous. Oh, well, that's a part, embodied. So dancing, I have a dance background. I used to have an African dance company, did contemporary and modern dance, and it's the expression and sharing an experience of being in my body, and then being in my body in relation to another. That's phenomenal. So I also like a lot of sexual intimacy, but we'll leave it at that.
I know we never got back to that, by the way. We kind of it was like a cliffhanger at the beginning,
that was PG.
And then we're leaving everyone, just wanting more, and that's okay. I love that. I love the paradox a bit of your two favorite things are to be in body, to meditate on the non-dualistic nature of existence, and relating with others, which is the most dualistic thing we can do, because it literally is, you are separate from me, I am here, and yet of course we know that's not true, right? We know there's no separation, but that is the non-dualistic way, or that's the dualistic way of experiencing it, right? Two physically human beings that are in separate bodies, and yet finding the oneness, right? So it's the paradox.
I wish people that were listening could just see that reaction from him.
I know. I'm so sorry. Those, you'll have to watch the video.
And that is exactly what we are getting to live in, as two individuals coming from different worlds of different things, but finding not only what's in common, but to live in that unitive, that non-dual unitive space is favorite thing, hands down. Sign me up for more another day.
So good. Those are your that's inspiring too. I can tell. And I love listening to answers by others, by the way, because either I feel so far removed from wanting to push myself physically. So when I hear Rose, you say that, I'm like, oh, go girl. Like that's inspiring because it's not what inspires, like I feel so far from that. And yet I appreciate it so much. And then I'll hear other people and they'll say something. I'm like, ooh, now I have new words for that. Like I am an external processor. And that actually, and like I have coffee with a friend of mine almost every morning, and we will talk for like 2 hours just to start the day. And that is what inspires me more than anything. Like if I can just do that every single day, I'm set. These conversations inspire me because I'm getting to relate with another. And anyhow, I love it. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap this up. So this is my little, as a avid reader in my life, I always love knowing what books people read. So if you have read a book that stands out to you on your journey as being a source of inspiration for you, what has it been? Or what is it?
The book of love.
Who wrote the book of love? Do, 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 do. I don't know if that's how the song goes, but that's how it goes in my head.
I stopped reading a lot of books when I had kids. Not on purpose, just how it panned out. I have a stack of books that I need to be reading. Need to be reading.
Need.
What book really inspires me? The last book I really read was The Presence Process. That really inspired me. There's a great practice in that. Are we reading any books? I have some leadership books. I have books on integral method. I mean, a lot of books are good, but nothing is standing out for me like this is a
that
must
one book. Yeah.
go read. Don't have that.
Cool.
Gotten into audiobooks and podcasting because I feel like the thing with books, and I do love reading too, but you have to like sit down and it has to be the one focus thing. But I love anytime I'm in the car, I'm putting my makeup on, I'm in the shower, and all those extra moments, or when you're in the kitchen where you can just be like downloading information, I love. And some of my favorite podcasts would be Luke's Story Lifestylist, would be Ritual, would be Julie Pyatt's Divine Throughline. She's got amazing like meditation and healing techniques on there. I love Shaman Durek's podcast. What's it called? Let me come back to that. But I'm sure if you search up Shaman Durek, that will come. It's bothering me that I can't remember what that is right now. Yeah, but a lot of like spiritual type stuff comes to mind. Awakening Code Radio is amazing. So those are podcasts, audiobooks. The Power of Now, because he actually reads it, and I just get into this like zone. Like this is like the book is great if you want to read it, but having him read it to you, you just like, oh my God. I got to see him live in Vancouver, and like he came on stage and he like meditated for a bit. It's like there's like this tunnel thing, and he gets it when you listen to that audio. Don't drive and listen to that audio. It, like transports you. Do you have that one?
No, I've read that book, and actually it was a great book, but I wanted to add another book, but I'll let you done.
I think that's it. But that is a good book, I can think, to start. The interesting thing about that book is I had it on my shelf for 7 years, only because Oprah told me to buy it. And I was in this I still love Oprah, and her podcast is great too. But I was like, I just did everything. I couldn't get it. It was like, he see him on the show, and I'm like, I couldn't even hear what he was saying. And I had the book, and I tried to read it several times, and I couldn't. It just was like jumbled words. And then one day I picked up the book, and it like poured into me. It was like the craziest thing. That is
how it happens. Yes, 100%. And that was why I asked this question, is because The Power of Now and Untethered Soul, I read back to back.
That was the other book I was just going to mention, Untethered Soul. That one changed my reality. The way you see through the paradigm of life, that's a good one. Untethered Soul.
Those were my two books. That's why I asked this question. Of course, that was the other book you were going to say. I actually somehow knew it. Like when you were like, there's another book, I'm like, I wonder if it's The Untethered Soul. It is. Yeah. So those two books, The Power of Now, Untethered Soul, I believe are incredible entry points if and when you're ready. Because the reality is, if I had read The Power of Now 2 years prior, 6 months prior, a year, you know what I mean? It literally would have been mumbo jumbo, right? Books come to us, messages come to us, teachers come to us when we are ready. And that is, to me, that is how it unfolds. So amazing. And loads of podcasts to go out and check out. I'm actually not familiar with many of those. I find that I have not been a big avid podcast listener. Of course, add the Being Inspired radio show to your list if you're listening. If you are, hopefully this one's already on your list. So, all right. Well, Thomas and Rose, this is any closing words before I thank you and thank our listeners for tuning in today. Was there anything else that came up?
Do you want me to say what makes a really great sex life? Yeah.
Yes.
I feel.
Yeah. Let me know.
He's going to take notes.
Yeah, let me get my paper.
It's something I didn't have before, and it is that emotional connection with someone. It's almost like, and I had realized this through dating, that I was done with takeaway sex, or it's one thing just to be like turned on and take your clothes off, but when you can meet someone and have that emotional connection first, it is mind-blowing. Yeah. I suggest holding out for it, because if you're filling your space with the other stuff in the meantime because you're lonely, you'll never attract in.
Can you expound on that really quickly? What do you mean by that? So if you're filling your space with like the sex and the physical intimacy,
really busy swiping right and dating a lot, you're not and you're dating and you know that you're going on dates multiple times, or dating or sleeping with men or women that you know are not the vibrational match for you, your real vibrational match you'll never make space for.
You'll never have room for it.
You'll never have room for it. So you have to actually be brave enough to sit alone for a moment, for a beat. For me, it was a day. It's a little low, but you have to have that create the space, create the opening for it to come in the trust and the faith there. Yeah, not settling. Yeah,
and to establish intimacy first.
Yeah.
But I thank you for just having us on your show today, and just asking us questions and letting us just be with you, and bringing more light and love into the world this way. It's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing yourselves, sharing a little bit of your story, even though this is a story that is near the beginning, and yet it's probably, well, of course, it's been unfolding for lifetimes. And here we are now getting to experience it in this point in time with you, and that's very exciting for me. You are a tremendous inspiration for me in terms of who I am expanding into, the relationship I am expanding into, the work that I am co-creating with another that I desire to expand into. So thank you. And thank you for all of you listening. I know and trust that you took something away from this, maybe many things away from this conversation that leaves you feeling more into what it means to live in love, to be in love, to be love. And on this day of Valentine's Day, which is when I am releasing this episode, for you to remember that more and more and more as you move forward, that love is everywhere. Love is everything. We are love, and we can be with others and share that in such a profound, deep way. So thank you all for being who you are. And until next time, many, many blessings.